Federal law allows citizens to reproduce, distribute, or exhibit portions of copyrighted motion pictures, videotapes, or video discs under certain circumstances without authorization of the copyright holder. This is called fair use and is allowed for purposes of criticism, news reporting, teaching, and parody, which doesn't infringe of copyright under 17 U.S.C. 107.
You know, as a police officer, I'm compelled to make this video. I've been in law enforcement for 10 years, and I'm speaking to my peers, other fellow officers, people in any kind of law enforcement position. I've seen officers nationwide enforcing tyrannical orders against the people, and I'm hoping it's the minority of officers, but I'm not sure anymore, because every time I turn on the television, every time I look to the internet, I'm seeing people arrested or cited for going to church, for traveling on the roadways, for going surfing, opening their businesses, going to the park with their families, or doing nails out of their own house, using their own house as a place of business, and having undercover agents go there and arrest them and charge them with what? With a crime? I don't know what crime people are committing by doing nails in their own house, but we're seeing this more and more and more, and we need to start looking at ourselves as officers and thinking, is what I'm doing right? Now, I want to remind you that regardless of where you stand on the coronavirus, we don't have the authority to do those things to people just because a mayor or a governor tells you otherwise. I don't care if it's your sergeant or your chief of police. We don't get to violate people's constitutional rights because somebody in our chain of command tells us otherwise. It's not how this country works. Those are de facto arrests. You know, we're violating people's rights.
I just want to stop it there. You know, I actually saw this video before somebody in the military who watches my channel. And lots of people in the military watch my channel, and they all do not hold this opinion. But I don't know if he's a subscriber or not, but Jeremy Bowser, he comments on my channel from time to time, mostly to disagree with me. And, you know, he was a little bit offended by the fact that I suggested people do armed protests. Now, an armed protest is not a violent protest, it's an armed protest. And an armed protest because the government is given power by the people, not the other way around. The people aren't given power and liberty by the government is given power by the people. And, you know, he's in the military. He brought up the Supreme Court, and I said the Supreme Court is not the ultimate authority in the land. The people are the ultimate authority in the land. And then he broke down the three, the three branches of government to me as if I was unaware of them, and said that I was revolutionary. And it was a dirty word, and I just thought that was interesting because our country was founded by revolutionaries who were revolutionaries because they came from a country that overstepped, where the powers that be overstepped and trampled on the people. And so the society in America was set up to prevent that from happening, to protect the people from the government going crazy with power. So to hear a police officer say these are de facto arrests, a de facto arrest can be an illegal arrest if there's no actual law being broken. So letting your child go play in somebody's house or go to the park, or, choosing to do nails inside of your house. These are not actual crimes, right? There's no law being broken. So then the arrests are illegal. They are de facto because there's no crime being committed, and it's a violation of people's rights. It's a violation of people's rights. So if people's rights are violated, They have the right to bear arms. They have the right to go protest bearing arms in a peaceful protest. And they also have the right to remove government officials who violate their rights. That is the right of the people. And it is the duty of our public servants, our police, our military, etc., to enforce the will of the people, not the will of the government. If there is a collision, and that's what this officer is talking about, between the rights of the people and the will of the government, the people win. The government speaks for the people. When the government starts to speak for itself and no longer speaks for the people, that's when our military and our police forces and our public servants back the people. Which, it was scary to me. I was actually afraid of the idea that there is somebody in the military who doesn't understand that. I support our military. I support our president, because honestly, our president didn't want to overstep his governmental authority. He attempted for as long as he could to just not. He didn't want to get involved in what the states were doing. He didn't want to put down a lot of orders from the federal government. He kind of got backed into a corner because the news was going crazy and people were being fear-mongered into a place where they were basically asking to have their rights taken. But it's scary, the contrast. I have a black man in the military who doesn't understand that as a military official or as a police officer, you protect the people from all enemies, foreign and domestic. You don't protect the government from the people. You protect the people from enemies outside of this country. And if the government turns into an enemy of the people, if the government becomes tyrannical, you protect the people. The people are represented by the government. The people elect officials to represent their interests. The government is not in charge. The government is a voice for the people. When the government stops being a voice for the people and are violating the rights of the people who are supposed to be running the country, the people run the country. Our elected officials work for us. They go to represent our interests, not their own interests. That's not how this works. Anyway, let's continue to listen to him.
And taking money from them, or even worse, arresting them and depriving them of their freedom when they are exercising their constitutional rights. So let's talk about that. Let's read something right here off of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh my gosh! He brought up his Declaration of Independence. So that's exactly what I said to this military guy, Jeremy. What's up, Jeremy? I'm not picking on you. I'm just using you for the sake of the conversation. That's what I brought up to Jeremy. I said, read your Constitution. Pull that sucker out. He said, me read the Constitution? I'm in the military. I'm in the executive branch of the government. Well, here's a police officer. He's comfortable with reading the Constitution. It's not an insult to be told to refer back to the law of the land. The supreme law of the land. It's not an insult to anybody's intelligence. I personally carry my Constitution with me when I travel. I can never look at it enough and familiarize myself with the original articles of that enough. The original framework of it enough. It should never be offensive to our military or to our police if we tell them, go back and look at your Constitution, read the Declaration of Independence, make sure that what you're doing for us, the people, aligns with what the government is asking you to do. That should never be an insult.
All men are created equal. Among these, we have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their power from the consent of the governed, meaning
governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed. When I quoted the consent of the governed to Jeremy, he said that the Supreme Court essentially spoke for the people. No, that's not. The Supreme Court is part of the government. The government is instituted among men, and their power comes to them from consent of the people they govern. If the people do not consent to what the government is doing, the government then loses its power. This is the United States. There are no dictatorships, tyrants, or otherwise here. And black, brown, purple, or blue, but especially black people, ought to recognize your rights cannot be violated by the government. That's not a thing. Now, you have mostly white people marching armed in protest over the violation of their rights. But if I come forth and say the black community should know that that is their right too, you are part of this country too. You have the right to bear arms. You have the right to consent. You have the right to demand the government represents your interests and does not violate your rights. And when your rights are being violated, you have the right to make it known. You will withdraw your consent for their power. Period. We should never expect the military nor law enforcement to enforce any decree that violates our rights. That's not something anybody has to tolerate.
Our power and any government official's power is derived from the people, okay? We don't hold power over our citizens. It's contradictory to everything that our country stands for. And this is what I'm seeing. First Amendment rights, telling people they can't go to church, freedom of religion, okay? Telling people they can't protest, freedom of...
Speak on it. You can't tell people they can't go to church. Separation of church and state is to protect the church from the state, not the state from the church. Separation of church and state is to keep the government out of your faith. You can't penalize and arrest people for holding a church service. I don't care what is going on. This is not appropriate. And it terrifies me that there are military and police officers, because I had a video where I explicitly said, we do not make the police and the military our enemy. Because if push comes to shove, they should side with the people. And if we draw a divide between the military and the police and us, it will be a problem. These are our family members. These are our fellow Americans. And if it comes time to ride, they should ride with the people. Above all things.
Assembly. Fourth Amendment violations, illegal traffic stops to check for papers. What are you, the Gestapo? Is this 1930s Nazi Germany? You don't get to stop people unless you have reasonable suspicion or probable cause that they have committed a crime. And I know people that have personally been stopped saying, we want to see papers showing that you're essential.
David 2, copy a phone call.
That is not how our job works, okay? What really has been pissing me off lately is the fact that these officers that are going out here and enforcing these tyrannical orders, what they're doing is they're making my job and my safety, or they're putting my job and my safety at risk. Because what you're doing is you're widening the gap between public trust and law enforcement officers. And what that's going to do is it's going to...
And it also puts us at risk. These mindsets put us at risk too, Jeremy. Your mindset that the government has authority over the people across the board, even to the point of violation of their rights, to the point where as a military official, you actually think people who have the legal right to open carry cannot go and protest whilst open carrying. That is scary. It endangers us as well, because a police officer or a military official who sees an American citizen protesting the violation of their rights whilst armed, who thinks that that is inappropriate and feels they must protect the government against the people, will harm the people. So get your minds right. If you are of that ilk of police officer or that ilk of military, it chilled my bones. It scared me to hear a black military official come into my comment section and say that I was being revolutionary. And that in my conversation about black people doing exactly what we see our white counterparts doing in this country, which is our right, which is to bear arms and to protest any violation of our rights. To demand protection under the law, equal protection under the law, so that we are not being gunned down in the streets whilst jogging. So that we are not being harassed in our neighborhoods. So that the penalty for our life is equal to the penalty of any life in this country. It chilled my bones to hear that that is considered revolutionary and that the ultimate authority falls to three branches of government, not the people. That consent of the people in a military official's mind is the consent of the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court is a part of the government, which is established by the consent of the people. That is what the articles say. That is what the Declaration of Independence says. It does not say anything about the Supreme Court is the arm of the consent of the people. That is insane. That is how people get shot out in these streets, by police officers and by military officials. That's how you have them doing urban training, teaching them to turn against American citizens. Look, I support the military and I support the police. If I have a problem, those are the people I need to call. And when I call them, I need to know that they understand that they serve us, the people. Because as long as we know and they know that the service that they do is for the people and not the government, then we will not be at odds with the very people that also carry weapons. We will never see our police forces and our militaries and our sheriff's departments turned against us. Now, clearly, it pains my heart to see this contrast between a black military official and a white policeman. One capable of understanding what his duties are and one not capable of understanding that. People come to me. I am an American citizen. I'm the person who made a video telling you guys, don't you ever side with a foreign country over our own interests as Americans. We carry an American passport. We don't tear our own country down to shreds. I'm the one who said the news, the liberal news is being treasonous in their behavior. And I'm the same one that says we have the right to bear arms and protest and remind our public officials that your place and your positioning and your power comes through our agreement. And when we cease to agree, you cease to have power. It is not the other way around. We are not at the mercy of the government. They are at the people's mercy. They are removed at the will of the people. They are replaced at the will of the people. They lose their positions in office at the will of the people. They will not enter a Capitol building at the will of the people. They don't get to pick and choose. We pick and choose as the people. There's nothing radical about that. There's nothing revolutionary about that. That's the law of the land. I'm confused as to why some people who are here to protect us are confused.
I mean, look at what's happened to law enforcement in the last 10 years. Less and less public trust, and more often than not, that is a result of isolated incidents that get blown out of proportion. They're not isolated anymore. They're happening every single day. And the thing that I want you guys to realize is that...
Did he just acknowledge that these are no longer isolated incidences? Jeremy told me I should not have made reference to the various incidences that I did in my video. What did he specifically say? Let's go back. Let's go back and look at literally what he said. If it becomes habitual, it stops being isolated. If habitually people are killing people with black skin and getting a slap on the hand, then it promotes the idea that you can kill somebody with black skin and get a slap on the hand. It then becomes connective by its nature. What would have been isolated ceases to be isolated at that point.
Our power that we hold as law enforcement officers, it's nothing more than a facade. It's a badge and a gun. And people, you don't realize, if you haven't lived in anarchy, if you haven't seen combat, things can be stripped from people in a heartbeat. And that's what I'm afraid of. I'm afraid that these actions are going to wake a sleeping giant, i.e.
And I think that is important too, because, Jeremy's like, I am part of the executive branch of the government. I am a military person. Okay. Well, we're not going to talk about what I do or don't know about the military. But what I will say is this, like he said, if you've ever been in combat or in a situation where there is anarchy, you know that you being in the military or you being a police officer or you being a citizen ceases to matter when chaos breaks out. Nobody's going to care what uniform you have on if it all goes down. War and anarchy is the great equalizer. Okay, it will equalize some stuff. Nobody's going to be on a high horse when we're all fighting. So it's better that we all respect what we have in place and not position ourselves as if we are some overarching authority over another person, because that can quickly go south. that can quickly go south, come back to bite us, and become a problem.
The American people, okay? They are going to be put in a position where they won't have their rights trampled anymore.
What? You're going to put the people in a position where they will refuse to have their rights trampled anymore, and then these military and civil servants will find themselves eye to eye with having to side with the people or not. And it's better we all not get there.
And us as law enforcement officers, we'll have our ability to enforce the law stripped from us in about 10 minutes. Okay? I think what is going to happen if this continues is we're going to see bloodshed in the streets. Okay? I don't want to see bloodshed in the streets on either side.
Keep it real. He's keeping it real. He is keeping it real right now. A lot of you don't like white people, but you know what? The truth is the flippin' truth, okay? The truth is the truth, is the truth. He's keeping it all the way real. If only all military and all sheriffs and all National Guard and all police officers could keep it this real.
Of this coin. I don't want to see fellow officers get injured or killed, and I certainly don't want to see citizens get injured or killed. And I promise you, most of you out there doing these tyrannical acts against our citizens, you're not ready for combat. You're not mentally or physically ready for combat in the first place. I promise you, you don't want to go through that, and I hope I never have to go through that again. You know, you don't get...
Did he say again? Oh, is he ex-military? Is he ex-military? Is he ex-military? A lot of military men and women watch my channel. I have a handful of patrons. I don't have very many, and several of them are military. Several are military. A lot of ex-military watch my channel. I have great respect for the military. We support the military. My patrons will tell you that. Individual military people even. I have a military man right now that I have no relationship personally with. We're not related or anything like that. Who I literally keep abreast with every day. Well, not every day, but several days a week. Just to make sure that he's okay. Just to know that he is supported. I have no beef with the police. I have no beef with the military. But it is scary when you have military officials like Jeremy who don't know where the power lies and whose interest is not in protection of the people. From even the government, if the government starts to do something unconstitutional. Protection of the people above the government when the government starts to engage in tyranny or unconstitutional acts. Protect the people. You are black, you are in the military, you protect us. Us, the people. You don't scold us and try to intimidate and scare us and educate us out of our rights.
To just say, well, I'm doing this because I was told to do so, or I'm following orders, or I need to keep this job. Guess what? I need to keep this job more than anybody. I have 3 young children. I have 2 houses. Like, I have the same sob story that the rest of you guys have. But my personal choices and my living arrangements, no matter what they are, don't allow me to trample on people's rights. And I don't understand why that concept is so hard for people to understand. Listen, You need to stand up for what's right. You need to, if you're part of a department or an agency that is asking people or asking their officers or their deputies to impose on people's rights and infringe on their freedoms, you need to step up and say, no, that's not me. That's not what I signed up for, and that's going against my oath. And if that costs you your job, so be it. At least you'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror at night. I've already expressed this to my department. And luckily for me, I come from a department that I feel like my chain of command shares my view, but I don't care what department you're part of or what your chain of command thinks. You don't get to trample on people's liberty. And so, you know, as a special operations veteran, I've fought on the streets of Iraq.
Oh, he is ex-military. Oh, snap! Jeremy, he's ex-military. Special ops. It's strange that he agrees with my feelings with regard to consent of the governed, but you don't. A whole black man out here coming to call me revolutionary like it's a dirty word. Getting offended because I said, read your Constitution. You're going to come back at me. I'm in the executive branch of the government. I'm in the military. Okay, well, military man, all that is it makes it more scary. First of all, it's nothing offensive about being told to revisit your articles. And remember why you wear that uniform. And it's not so you can come and tell me how I should not tell people that they ought to be armed, as is their right, and they ought to protest their rights being violated. No, that's not what we do. How many of y'all have this point of view in the military? I support the military, but I'm trying to understand, are more military people like this officer, or are more military people like Jeremy? Think that the three branches of government have control over the people. Think that the government needs to be protected from the people. Think that telling people that they should arm themselves and be ready to make a public show to their public officials that, hello, you're stepping out of line. How many military people find that to be a problem? Because that's when your trigger finger will get itchy when you're told to control a crowd of American citizens doing what is their right to do. In our country, it's not the government's country, it's the people's country. It's the people's government. So I'm so confused at the polar opposite mindsets.
For under the U.S. government's guise of freedom. And I'm telling you what, the American people are going to be, you are going to wake a sleeping giant. And they are going to fight 10 times harder for their freedom on their soil than anything you've ever seen before.
What? What will they do? And this is why you should respect and not shame people for wanting to exercise their freedoms. Because let me tell you, I'm so tight right now. And I speak so aggressively on my channel right now because my freedoms are being violated. If you leave my liberty the hell alone, I won't be on YouTube talking about why are we taking up arms to escort people into Capitol buildings to take away our rights. If you just leave my rights alone, I won't have to make that video. I don't need to be scolded. I understand what country I live in. I know how our country is made out. I know who the government is to me as an American citizen. I know what their job is and what their job is not. But if our powers that be lose focus in sight of that, that will rip our country apart. If because I have a black face, you want to infringe upon my right, or you think it is wrong for me to tell other black people they have every right that white people do to arm themselves and protest, then that is problematic.
And if that's something you're willing to face, then keep trampling on people's rights. But I promise you, the American spirit of defiance is going to rise again, and it's going to be a big problem for our country. So I'll leave you with this, something that I learned as an E-nothing in the Army. No matter what situation you're put in, if you look inside yourself and ask yourself one question, am I doing the right thing? You ask yourself that, you know the answer. And no amount of money or no order or law or anything should be able to make you go against doing the right thing. So I'm imploring officers to look inside themselves and ask themselves, is this what I want to be doing to my citizens? And I think the answer is clear. And if we all stand up together, guess what? It'll be a non-issue, no factor, because people and law enforcement will be united like we should be.
Yo, it's nothing but facts. He spit nothing but facts for 8 minutes straight. I can't argue with it. You may not like the color of his skin or some petty stuff like that, but facts are facts. And he spit nothing but facts. Jeremy, I always appreciate when you comment, but you need to get your mind right. Get your mind right. Don't think you know my motivations. And don't ever insinuate I'm encouraging people to do anything that is not legal. Read your Constitution, like I said. And then ask yourself, why am I out here tripping? Why am I out here trying to tell this woman she has absolutely no right to encourage people to do the very things that are perfectly legal for them to do in this country, both protest and be armed? To be intolerant of the government overstepping their rights, to demand that they are treated as equal citizens in this country, period. To know that they can revise and replace the government officials that do not respect the rights of the people. It is the ignoring of those facts and the violation of people's rights, just as this officer said, that start revolutions. It is people like you who do not respect people who are in government, in the military, in law enforcement, who do not respect the Constitution and the rights of the people, that push people as their rights are being violated to revolt. Revolutions are not started because people just like fighting. Revolutions are started because governments get out of control. Because people watch their rights get violated. They see themselves being killed. They see themselves being locked away. They see themselves being silenced. They see their rights trampled on, and they get to a point where they have had enough. And the solution is not to further violate people's rights and chastise them for reminding each other that you know you have rights, right? The solution is to tell the people in power that they need to tell your fellow soldiers, to tell your fellow police officers, that if we participate in the violation of people's rights, they will feel the need to push back. So we stand with the Constitution. We stand with the people. We stand together, and then the government falls back in line and we can have peace. Or we become the enemies of the people that we are supposed to protect, and it becomes chaos. That is the decision. And that decision is not in the hands of the people. The decision to violate us is in the hands of the violators. And there's absolutely nothing revolutionary about me saying that. When did the law of the land become a revolution? That's what we need to ask ourselves.